Hey guys, Lytane here, and for the longest of times I've wanted to make a movie. I've got so many ideas rattling around in my head of all different stuff that I want to do. TV shows, movies, just everything is rattling around. But those things take time, energy, and money. At least $2,184. Yes, at least. How did I get a very specific number? Well, I learned that from a movie within a movie. So today I want to have a look at that movie. It's called Bowfinger and see if it's worth it. Bowfinger was released in 1999, which tells the story of Bobby Bowfinger, a struggling and very poor movie producer that is desperate for his first big break. After reading a script that his accountant/receptionist wrote called Chubby Rain, he knows that it will be a hit, so he tries his hardest to get it financed and picked up by a studio. With his suave and over-the-top nature, he approaches one of the studio people and pretends that he has this really hot script and that Kit Ramsey, who is the hottest action star around, is also interested in. He gets a go-ahead, but only if he can actually get Kit Ramsey. So now he has to con his way over to Kit's place and try and convince him. Kit has let the fame and fortune go to his head a little and is very paranoid, but gives Bowfinger a chance before rejecting him and the script. Oh well, looks like that's the end of his hopes and dreams and the movie, am I right? Or is it? That night, he pulls together all of his savings, which just so happens to be $2,184, and decides to make the movie anyway. He borrows gear and camera from a studio lot, which is practically stealing, finds some Mexicans at the border and puts them to work, and underpays all of his actors because he has to get this movie done. But he is still missing Kit, so his brilliant plan is to follow Kit around and film him without his knowledge, and have the actors say their lines to him, and then he reacts in a paranoid, normal person way. But they also needed a stunt double for some of the more awkward shots that they can't quite get with just approaching Kit, so they hire a man named Jiff, an awkward guy that's only claimed to fame as looking exactly like Kit, except a little bit more nerdy. But can they get this movie made? Will Kit figure it out, or will he believe he's actually being attacked by aliens, or will it blow up in Bowfinger's face and the tears will look like Chubby Rain? Bowfinger has a relatively small cast with a few noteworthy people. Of course, Bowfinger is played by Steve Martin, the guy that's had white hair for practically his entire life, I swear. He's been in plenty of different things, he was in Cheaper by the Dozen, he was in Planes, Trains and Automobiles, and just a whole bunch of other things. Here he is Bowfinger, the suave conman of the movie, and throughout the entire film, you know that he is a bad guy, but you can't help but just want to root for him. You want him to succeed. You want him to get this movie made because he's just so... his presence is just so commanding, and it's just, he can't help but draw your attention to it all the time, and it's just a lot of fun to watch him and all of the crazy stuff that he has to go through in order to get his dream to come alive. Yes, he's doing a lot of dodgy things in order to get it done, but I don't know, I think you root for him because he's the underdog and you just want him to win. Kit and Jiff are both played by Eddie Murphy, who is just crazy way over the top as Kit, where he's like, you know, saying stuff about how the white executives at Hollywood are trying to sabotage the black man, and there's KKK and all this stuff. He goes way over the top, and it's just like completely batshit crazy. Then to spin it as Jiff, he is this completely shy, awkward, really nerdy guy, and I really like the difference between the two parts. It's just it's a lot like when he does these Nutty Professor movies, which has multiple roles with him playing the different ones, but this one has him as this is just way over the top actor, and then this way over the top nerd, and I think he does both of them really well, but I prefer Jiff just because he's more socially awkward, and I like that. It's not so much over the top like Eddie Murphy is used to. It's more, it's actually more tame over the top, if that makes any sense. Heather Graham plays Daisy, who is this girl that's just fresh into Los Angeles, like pretty much that day as soon as the movie starts, and she decides that she wants to become an actress. Over the course of the film, she pretty much sleeps with every single character in order to sleep her way to the top, and eventually she does it in front of everybody's face, and it's a little funny as well because everyone just sees like, oh yeah, one guy goes to kiss her and then she's already with another one. He's like, oh, I thought, yeah, we were together. But they never question it, and she doesn't get confronted with any of it, so it does actually kind of work. She does sleep her way up. But as a character, she's pretty bland, to be honest. Not really much goes and happens to her except for the fact that she's sleeping her way to the top. But I do think it's funny because when she's being Daisy, the acting is fairly good, but then when she is in the fake movie within the movie, she's way over the top, and she's like acting like this, and it's pretty funny, and it just seems like it would have been a lot of fun to tell these actors, like, yep, don't act well, just go way over the top and be really bad on purpose, and she definitely delivers on the bad performances when it's the movie within the movie. The plot to this film is a very simple one. Film someone without their knowledge or permission and turn it into a movie, and aside from the very start of the film, it does move at a decent pace. It is constantly going between the different shots that they need to do with the tiniest of budgets, and the way that they get around these money constraints are sometimes funny and other times actually really well thought out. Like using a guy with a big foil sign to bounce light onto the actor that you're filming, or taking equipment from real studios without letting them know in order to actually film it. The scenes in between the shooting sections can sometimes drag on a little bit. They do spend a lot of time with how Daisy is sleeping her way up the ladder, and it doesn't have a real payoff. When researching this movie, I did learn that it was a dig at Anne Heche, who was sleeping with Steve Martin before she cheated on him to sleep her way up the ladder and even started dating Ellen. But I feel like a lot of the movie was spent on that joke and that idea, and I would have liked to have seen more character interactions or more development of the group instead, or even some of the other scenes that they had to film. I fully understand that this movie was made in a way to poke fun at Hollywood, and this kind of thing happens all the time. Sleeping your way to the top or people using sex as a currency is there, but I still wish it was toned down more in the film. The rest of the film makes a lot of fun of Hollywood and the process of filmmaking, and I think that a lot of these digs are quite personal to Steve Martin and to things that go on in Hollywood, especially like the Daisy section is something that happened to him in real life, but in this case he's doing it in a bit more of a funny way. But in doing this, it does alienate some of the viewership. When I watch this movie, I can see the passion that Bowfinger has, and I love the way that he creatively gets around all of his problems, or most of his problems, and the fact that he has this big drive and passion, and he wants to get his ideas out there. I can relate to all of that, and because I'm a bit more savvy between, the film side of the world, I get a lot more of the humor and a lot more of the digs that he's making throughout the film. Whereas when my girlfriend watched it, she did find it entertaining and she did laugh at a lot of the jokes, but not all of them, because some of them just sort of flew over her head, and some of them she didn't think were funny because she doesn't get that Hollywood side of things. So while this movie does have a lot of humor, some of it does fall flat, especially if you don't know anything about Hollywood or the nature of the business. An example of one of the scenes that I found funny that my girlfriend did not was the scene where Daisy and Bowfinger go on a date with one another, and it's cleverly written in the sense that they're talking in the scene, they're just talking at each other. Pretty much Steve Martin says something, and then Heather Graham just repeats the last couple of words and then just says her own thing. There's no real conversation, there's no discussion, there's no anything. It's just people saying words at each other, and I thought that was pretty funny, but my girlfriend did not. It's not something that she thought was well written or entertaining. I thought it was funny because that's sometimes how Hollywood is. It's really fake and you just pretend. And then at other times, especially in movies and TV shows, they kind of skip out on a lot of that awkward small talk and getting to know each other's scenes because it just drags the movie down. So they just speed it up and they just, instantly have main characters, or just characters in general, have things that they instantly like or dislike about one another, and you can easily build off of it. Whereas this one was just poking fun at that and just having these two characters just talk at each other instead of to each other, which is what other movies would. do. That being said, there is other types of humor throughout this film, and there's a lot of slapstick and over-the-top silly humor as well, like when Jiff has to run across a freeway in order to get a single shot, and Bowfinger tells Jiff that, oh yeah, don't worry about all the cars that are driving 100 kilometers an hour, you know, through the freeway. They're stunt drivers. And he eventually convinces Jiff to run across the freeway, and he does so, and he screams, you know, like, oh Lord, oh mercy, oh God. And it's pretty funny. It's pretty silly as well. And the payoff is that he gets to the other side, and he's freaking out, of course, as you would be if you just ran across a freeway and survived. And then Bowfinger, just being the jerk that he is, he's like, oh yeah, it's great, you know, you're great, I'm gonna need you to get some coffee, and I'm gonna need you to do this, and he's like trying to calm him down. He's like, okay, I can get some coffee, and it's like, yep, just after we do one more take. It's so silly, and it's such a funny scene that that kind of humor resonates well with most people, so I found that funny, and so did my girlfriend. But then some of the other parts of the humor fell a little bit flat. The way that this movie is set out, especially that of the scenes with Kit as an unknowing actor, is that of a very low budget film. The effects are low budget, the acting is very over the top a lot of the time, and the sets are nice enough, but there are few of them. Then when they do their own filming, it's even lower budget, which makes me laugh because it's so much more real, and it's done so on purpose. It must have been so much fun for the actors to be so bad at acting when many of them are actually good actors. This is one of the movies that inspires me to make my own movies. To see how creative you must be in order to bring your vision alive fills me with a drive and a passion. I wish I was as charismatic as Bowfinger and that I had people that would help me make my dreams come true, but at the same time I also see how hard it is, which is going to lead to some spoilers, so skip ahead to this time that I flash up on the screen unless you want to see what the ending's about. At the end of the film, they get caught. During the last major shot of the film, they need Kit to yell out to the aliens, "Gotcha, suckers!" But Terry, played by Terrence Stamp, figures out the whole plan and puts a stop to it. Terry is the leader of Mindhead, a cult that bears a lot of resemblance to Scientology in how some big actors can fall into their cult. This movie isn't really subtle about it either. They smear this cult and try and make it look stupid and only looking after their own personal agenda. To be fair, they do throw a bone to these people saying that they are trying to help Kit, but Terrence says one of my favorite lines in the whole film. Sometimes the paranoid really are being followed. Seeing them get caught makes me see how hard it is to make a name for yourself in Hollywood. To be creative and to have a dream and a passion is great, but it doesn't really mean much unless you can either prove yourself or sometimes if you are lucky. They only get the okay to release the film because they caught Kit showing his you know, to some Laker girl cheerleaders. So once again, a con gets them everything, but life doesn't always work out that way. Bowfinger is, in my opinion, worth it. It is such an underrated comedy film. I love the satire of Hollywood and actors and the fact that the whole system is this weird, corrupt, evil thing, but some good can come out of it. I like that the main character is not a morally great person. He's a con artist that manipulates other people in order to get his own dream and passion to come to life. I like the fact that the humor is both the well-written kind and the slapstick humor. I like the fact that the entire film has this really low-budget, low-key element to it, but it works in its favor because it feels like it's supposed to be a small film. It's not trying to be over the top and big and courageous, it's just trying to do what it has to do. But like I said, some of the humor in this film will fall flat for some people. The satire of Hollywood is not a subject that everyone cares about, so a lot of those jokes and a lot of that humor will either just fall flat or just not gain any interest at all. But there is enough of the other kind of humor, the silly, the slapstick, to make up for it, so I don't know. I would still recommend this movie, even if you aren't a big fan of what Hollywood could be, or like, you know, behind the scenes peek at Hollywood. I still recommend this movie, and I still think it's an underrated movie that needs to get more attention. So tell me what you guys thought about the film Bowfinger. Have you ever seen it before? Because so many people have not. No one that I know has ever seen it, except for the people within my family, and I always say that this is a movie that people should watch, and I always say, oh, you know, you should watch Bowfinger, or you should check it out, especially some of my friends that really enjoy making movies and stuff like that. So I highly recommend this film, but I want to hear your thoughts down below. And don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. But when researching this movie, I learned that it was a dig at Anne Heche. I really need to learn how to pronounce names. To be creative and to have a dream and a passion really does mean... in the middle of a sentence. And the worst thing about sneezes is when you've got one on the tip of your nose and then you have that mid-sneeze face. The worst ones are when you don't sneeze after. I can do it again. Bowfinger